After 2 deadly Boeing crashes in the past 6 months, the Federal Aviation Administration says it will revamp how it oversees the development of airplanes. The announcement comes as Congress held hearings Wednesday. Lawmakers questioned Transportation Department officials over whether the FAA had gone too far in letting companies regulate themselves. CBS News transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve reports from Capitol Hill.
Should they have been mandatory? Yes or no?
FAA Acting Administrator Dan Elwell was grilled by senators about the failures that led to 2 737 MAX crashes, killing nearly 350 people. He promised changes to aviation safety oversight.
I want to assure you and everyone else that the FAA will go wherever the facts lead us in our pursuit of safety.
Minnesota Democrat Amy Klobuchar wanted to know how the FAA's approval process allowed the 737 MAX to fly with a new anti-stall system that wasn't disclosed to pilots.
Are there any safety measures the FAA may have miscalculated when evaluating the safety features of the Boeing 737 MAX?
We certify aircraft in a way that we have refined, as I said, for large aircraft. Large commercial aircraft.
Was this consistent with how you've done other certifications in other situations, the Boeing situation?
Yes, ma'am.
But if you learn something else after this investigation or other things come out, you may change that process.
Absolutely. That's how we get better.
These questions, when they arise, if they arise, are troubling.
Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao, whose department oversees the FAA, was also in the spotlight today.
Well, that plane lost the confidence of the American traveling public because
West Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin, a pilot himself, demanded to know why the 737 planes weren't grounded sooner.
There was no factual basis upon which to ground the planes.
In Washington state, Boeing hosted 200 pilots and airline officials from around the world to demonstrate software changes it's planning for the grounded 737 MAX fleet.
The 737 is a safe airplane.
Boeing said it will require additional training on the MAX before pilots will be allowed to return to the cockpit.
The FAA is expected to make changes to how it evaluates training and self-audits done by companies like Boeing. If the FAA was to self-certify aircraft purely on its own, the agency says it would require 10,000 additional employees and cost about $1.8 billion more. Tanya?
Chris Van Cleve, thank you. Mike Slack is a licensed pilot, former NASA engineer, and aviation attorney. He joins me now from Austin, Texas. Mike, welcome. Thanks so much for being with us. What do you make of the FAA's announcement to revamp oversight? Is this enough, or is it too little too late?
Well, it may be too little too late on the MAX 8, but going forward, the FAA needs to take more direct oversight over the certification and more hands-on control of certification of commercial air transport aircraft. It's a different world than general aviation, and the fact that the manufacturer is routinely certifying all aspects of the aircraft simply needs to change. These 2 crashes bring that to the forefront.
Several Senate Transportation Committee members expressed concern over Boeing's practice of charging more for certain safety systems. Is that common? And could we see this change in the future?
I hope we see it change. We've seen this in general aviation. We've seen manufacturers charge extra for more safe fuel tanks, for more safe this or that. There should not be a charge for safety items. Safety items should be dealt with as something that is going to reduce the risk of hazardous outcome, and it simply should not be an option item on a manufacturer's checklist.
Mike, Boeing has been fairly quiet since the Ethiopian Airlines crash. Are you surprised about the lack of statements coming out from Boeing?
Well, it seemed for a while Boeing was saying all the wrong things, so maybe being quiet is a positive change. But Boeing is in a deep hole. They're sharing that foxhole with the FAA. And there's a lot of explaining to do. This airplane has problems in its DNA. It probably should never have been a supplemental certification. It probably should have been a clean sheet, original type certificate certification, because it was too dissimilar to its predecessor models. There are a lot of problems here. The underlying stability problems, the automated pitch control system called the MCAS has got problems. And back to the piece that you ran ahead of me, the training, you can't train pilots until you understand the problem and you can put the problem in the simulators. Until this problem can be replicated in the simulators, the pilots aren't going to understand how to deal with it.
So would you like to see this particular model scrapped altogether?
No, I think that there needs to be a comprehensive review of the certification and the problems addressed. There's no reason to scrap the entire model, but I think there's a lot of work to be done, and there were some shortcuts taken, and those shortcuts need to be illuminated and fixed.
Now, we do know that Boeing is also holding a meeting with aviation experts from around the world at their Boeing headquarters. What do you think the company is hoping to accomplish with that?
I can't imagine what they're bringing in people to do other than restore some credibility with customers, relationships, and hope that they can mend some problems that they've got just by virtue of this disastrous situation. What Boeing needs to be concentrating on is fixing the problem and making sure that the problem is the answers to the problem are disseminated to the aviation community. Those that have bought this aircraft and are training pilots need to understand the problem and how to deal with it.
You know, Mike, I think to the average American traveler, this is all pretty scary. You know, we hear that this plane is safe, it's not safe. What would you say to, you know, the average American who's just booking a plane flight about Boeing and about this particular plane?
The vast majority of aircraft, there's not a problem. This is a unique situation. It's the first of its kind in a long, long time. You have a newly certified aircraft with 2 fatal crashes. That's unique. The fact that it's grounded, the public should feel okay about the situation. But the big challenge is going to be when there's discussion of putting the aircraft back in the air, whether it's safe. And there are going to have to be lots of eyes on it in addition to Boeing and the FAA because their credibility is already shot.
Well, Mike Slack, we hope your eyes are on it as well. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
You bet. Thanks for having me.